What's going on, my people? I am back with you with another video regarding the sad state of affairs in gaming right now, all surrounded around the ABK deal. Man, let me tell you, there are people out here who are willing to say and probably do anything to make their point, including lying and being deceptive. These people, I'm just going to go ahead and be direct. Ponies are out here. That's what they call them. That's not what I call them, but that's what they call them. So I'm going to call them that so you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Now, to be clear, not all Sony PlayStation fans are ponies. In fact, most PlayStation fans aren't ponies. In fact, I work with some people who have a PlayStation, and yeah, they play it a pretty good bit, and they don't even know this ABK deal is even going down. They don't know anything about it. I'm talking about a specific small circle of people who love to come through Twitter and tell their lies and show their gaming dysfunction. These people are not embarrassed at all to come out and just cap for Sony like they're being paid, but they're not being paid. Let me say this first too. Let me get a couple of very important things out of the way. First of all, I want to say this to the Xbox fans who are keeping up with this, or if you're like me, you play on the PC mostly, but you're a fan of Game Pass and you really want Game Pass to flourish, you wanted to have games and all of that. Don't get too happy about what's going on in the hearing, because I know that the judge has really been raking the FTC over the coals, man. I mean, one of the things that she said yesterday was, because anyone who's been keeping up with the hearing knows that the FTC keeps bringing up Sony like a lot. They're putting the name Sony in the place where they should be putting the name consumer. And I guess she had enough of it, and one of the FTC attorneys said something regarding Sony being adversely affected by this deal if it goes through. And she told him, we are here not to protect Sony, but the consumers. She actually had to tell him that. She clearly has a problem with their case. She has been pointing out many, many weaknesses in their case. And I can understand why one would believe that Xbox is going to win. But what you have to understand is you don't know what her standard is. Even though she's pointing out and poking all of the holes in the FTC's case, that doesn't mean that her standard isn't one which they have met. She could just be saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and grant you what you want, but just know this, your case is weak. And she could be just telling them, she could be giving them tough love, just telling them to shore up their case, is what she could be saying. So don't get too happy. And you don't know what these people discuss when they sit in one of their offices and somebody pulls out a very expensive bottle of whiskey or tequila or whatever the hell they're into, and they start negotiating and, doing a little hand wringing and back slapping and making some backroom deals. So you don't know. So relax. But one thing I will say is this, and as a person who does not play mobile, I might be biased, but when that list came out of companies that Xbox is looking to purchase, I really got upset, because I was like, man, why didn't you just go for that? Why are we even here regarding ABK? Why did you try to go for that first? Why not go for these companies? Let's be honest, I don't care what Sega says. That statement they made about not being for sale right now, you could just read it and tell, because if they were planning to sell to Microsoft, they couldn't say it anyway. They have to say that they're not going to sell. They have to say that. But basically, you can tell they're going to end up being owned by Microsoft. I would be very shocked if they didn't. But even if Microsoft loses the ABK deal, they're going to focus on that list and they're going to be very aggressive. Now, I understand why they're going for ABK. Like I said, I would rather they have focused on that list. I understand that they're going for the whole mobile aspect of the business. I understand that. But I'm being selfish. I don't really play mobile games. It's not that I have never played mobile games. I have, when I'm in a situation where I find myself waiting for something and I didn't expect to, and the only thing I have is my phone. Usually in that situation, I would choose to read, but maybe I've had enough of reading, so I want to do something else. So I end up playing a game, and I have been pleasantly surprised at times. Not enough to choose it over either a handheld PC or even a console, but I was like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. And from what I understand, I've heard some people who play on the console and on the PC say that the telephone version of Call of Duty is actually pretty awesome. So I just want to check that out. But anyway, don't get too hyped. So don't get too hyped. But man, these people are out here rehashing, like they're bringing up the judge and the fact that her son works for some division at Microsoft. And there's even some, according to the Red Dragon, and I'll put his name out there. You guys know I don't usually put people's names out there, but I'll put his out there because he puts his name out there so much, and he's such a blatant liar that you probably already know about him. He's already been skull dragged through social media. There's nothing that you can probably say on his timeline that's going to, affect him emotionally at all whatsoever. So I don't mind putting him out there. But they're bringing up the judge, and they're saying there's some group that wants her to step down. Here's the deal. She already brought that up. She brought that up at the very beginning. She made it known that her son worked for Microsoft, and she said, if anyone has any issues with this, let's hash it out right now. No one had an issue with it, including the FTC. So, like I told this one guy online, it's a moot point right now. I mean, I can kind of see if it threw up a red flag, but I'm sorry, that time has passed. So she was honest about it. The guy who worked for the CMA, who once worked for a law firm that represented Sony, he wasn't so honest about it. He didn't give anybody an opportunity to say whether or not they thought he should recuse himself or not. But another thing I want to do is I want to state where I stand personally when it comes to exclusive games. I think games should go everywhere. Now, I have a small exception, and that is if a company developed a game, because most developers don't have a piece of hardware out there, but if a developer does have a piece of hardware out there and they want an advantage when it comes to a particular game that they developed, they can place that game as an exclusive on their hardware for maybe 3, at the most 6 months. That will give them a huge advantage, because you know how a lot of people are in gaming. They can't wait. They can't wait. They got to have it when it drops. So that's pretty strong. If you can have that game on your console 6 months earlier than everyone else, then you've got a big advantage. But there's no reason to lock it out completely from every other console. Everybody should be able to play every game. They should have access to every game. Now, I believe that if that company wants to, they can have DLC to make it more attractive that's only on their console. But the whole game, a whole game, and there should be verbiage which describes the difference between DLC and a whole game, because people will play with that, and they'll be out here, they'll make a whole game, but they'll make a part 2 to a game, but they'll call it a DLC, and it'll be a 30-hour DLC. So yeah, we'd have to do that, but I don't believe in that. I also believe that people who pay other companies not to put their games on other people's hardware should go to prison. I believe you should go to prison. And that's not so bad when you consider the fact that a lot of these white-collar prisons are like golf clubs. I'm not going to tell you how I know, but I've actually been to a couple of them, and yeah, they even walk around, a lot of them, with their own clothes on. They don't even have a uniform. Yeah, you should go to prison for doing that, because think about it. We hear about the guys who start something in their garage. Well, there's a couple of young people right now. They've been working on a piece of hardware, man. They're young men, 17, 18, 19 years old, and they come up with a piece of hardware, and they've been working hard on it. And let's say by the time they turn 23, they've perfected it, and they're ready to put it on the market. Well, people like Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo should not be able to go around and pay companies to keep their games off of those young men's console because they don't want to compete with another console. They shouldn't be able to do that. Like I said, you should go to prison for that. No one should be able to do that. That is the one thing that Sony did that I find very, very scandalous. If you put every game on every console or piece of hardware, that will make it more competitive. That will make it where these companies won't have such a big advantage over the other. They would have to compete with other companies. And that would also drive prices down, because one thing that happens when companies start competing with each other, one of the ways that they try to compete and get the attention of the consumer is by dropping prices in one way or another, or making their products more attractive, because you can save money if you go with their product. The one of the attorneys with the FTC said that, I forget his exact words, but he was saying that there's no proof that model works. You got to be fucking kidding me. Anyway, I'm not gonna get too much into that because that's ridiculous. And one of the reasons why I like Game Pass is because, look, I'm an old school guy. I like the idea of going in the store, buying my game. I want to own my game. I want to take it home. I want to play. I want to own it forever. I don't want anybody to be able to shut it off so I can't play it. But that is not the state of where we are. In fact, I wish someone was able to make some sort of third-party machine so that we could play all the old school games on that machine. It should have a place for a cartridge and a place for a disc, and we can just play it like it reads. It's coded so that it can read all of the discs. It can read every platforms, whether they have a cartridge or a disc. It could read their coding. So that's what I wish. I would go so far as even to say that. But that is not the state of affairs. When you buy a game now, you have a license to play that game as long as that company wants to make that game available. And now we're living in a time where these companies have access to the technology to cut that game off, even if you have the disc or the cartridge. They can cut it off. They're legally covered to do it. Because when you purchase it, you're just purchasing a license to play that game. It's one of the reasons why a lot of these companies have a problem with companies like GameStop selling used games, because they don't get a cut of it. I mean, this is just where we are now. So the way I'm looking at it is, if it's going to be like that, if all I'm doing is purchasing a license to play a game, which you can cut off at any time, yeah, I might as well just have a subscription service and not waste time, because, you know, you can look up in a lot of the games that you have collected, you know, some of them you may not be able to play. At that point, they're just paperweights. But to veer back on topic, for a lot of these ponies, I think that a lot of things that's been happening over the last 3 months is just a little bit too much for them to take. I mean, you have the show. Xbox had a great show. They got a lot of accolades for that. And then people began to talk about Starfield. There was a lot of effort in trying to get people to hate Starfield on behalf of the ponies, but they were failing at an abysmal rate. There were a couple of legitimate red flags, but not enough to make people turn on the game. And I think that this ABK deal, if Xbox wins it, I think for a lot of them, that's going to be a little too much. But I'll say this, even if Xbox loses this hearing, I tell you this, if you're somebody that was cheering for that, don't put your bottle of volumes away just yet, because Xbox is poised to go on a tear when it comes to a buying spree. That has been revealed along with many other little nuggets in this hearing. It's really sad, man, to see these people out here. People are creating ghost accounts on Twitter. They're coming out, they're making moronic comments, and they know they're moronic. That's the reason why they're making these ghost accounts. And then when they get called out, you know, a few times, somebody make a couple of comments, they delete it and you can't find it. Like there was one guy who was saying Xbox is trying to buy half of gaming, and people were like, half of gaming? Who is that? Who are they trying to buy this half of gaming? Because Activision Blizzard certainly isn't half of gaming. And I pretty much asked that question when I was waiting for a response, because on all of these tweets, if you tweet something, especially if you don't agree with the ponies tweet, you're getting responses. And I was kind of shocked to see that I wasn't getting any responses. I was getting alerts, but not from that thread. Well, come to find out that the guy, he deleted it. There's that going on as well. But one thing I have to do is I have to apologize to Phil Spencer and the Xbox team in general, because I really felt, I never disliked Phil Spencer. I always admired him and his accomplishments, but I felt that one of his Achilles heels was that he was weak. So I thought he was weak because I always wondered, like, why isn't he making more exclusive deals aggressively? He's got all of this money. Sony has made it clear that they want to win. They want to win in the gaming industry. So why doesn't he? I understood enough to know that even in some cases he might have had to do it at a loss, but I was just wondering why they weren't doing it. And I thought it was a failure on their part. Well, come to find out, unbeknownst to me, not only were they dealing with the exclusive deals that we knew Sony was closing, there's also the fact that Sony was going around paying companies simply not to put their games on the Xbox. Not an exclusive deal, just don't put your game on the Xbox. And then on top of that, I imagine that Sony was also making threats with their market share, basically saying, hey, look, we're gonna give you some money, but we really need you to do this. And if you don't do it, then you're not gonna get the money and we're not gonna let you put your game on the PlayStation. And for a lot of these companies, that's too much to bear, because Sony has the #1 market share among the consoles. And if you're creating a game, you cannot afford to be outside of that market share. So basically, these companies, in their defense, a lot of them probably felt like they had no choice. And one thing that came to light that I didn't really think about it, and it's really common sense. Sorry if the sound just messed up. I just put my hand over my mouth. But anyway, the way it was explained, the way Phil explained it was very clear. Because of Sony's market share, when we do an exclusive deal, we have to basically purchase that market share. And that makes us purchasing an exclusive deal much, much, much cheaper. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It's much more expensive for them than it is for Sony to do an exclusive deal. And basically what they had to ask themselves is, hey, look, we have the money, we could spend it, but what are we gonna have when it's all said and done? What are we gonna have for our money? The fact that we were able to keep a game off of Sony, and it probably was eventually gonna go to Sony anyway. So if we're gonna spend that kind of money, we need to own what we're paying for. We don't need to rent it. It's like renting a car. If you're gonna go out here and rent a car, and you're going to spend just as much money renting that car as you would had you bought it, you may as well have purchased it. I can see that. I understand that now. In a couple of videos, like I said, I've never insulted anybody with the company. I've never insulted Phil. I've never called for Phil to be fired. I just felt that was a weakness on his part. And I really just kind of wondered if he had what it took to stand up to a businessman like Jim Ryan, who's obviously cutthroat. And come to find out, man, not only him, but a couple of other people, hopefully I don't slay this guy's name, Satya Nadella or something like that, but I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about, even if I'm mispronouncing the name. But man, that dude's a hitman. And come to find out, Phil is no weak guy. There's just there's a method to the madness. There's a reason for everything he's doing, even if I and you and everybody else doesn't see it. And Matt Booty is a ninja assassin. Keep the emails flowing, Matt. Keep the emails flowing. Another false narrative that's being tossed around is PC players and Xbox gamers have teamed up to go against Sony. This is ridiculous because we have no reason to take sides with anyone, at least not that kind of reason. I mean, we're not taking sides. When it comes to this particular issue, you're just wrong, but you have to consider we're getting everything. We're getting your games. We're getting Xbox games day and date. Even if you want to look at mobile, most of us have mobile phones very much up to date. Most of us have modern phones, which stands to reason. I mean, you're not going to have an up-to-date PC, which is what you have to play these new games that's coming out now, let's be honest. But you're going to be walking around with a 10-year-old cell phone. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So we're eating good, man. We're eating good. We have no reason to take sides with anyone. The thing is, it appears that we're taking sides because we're going against you because you are wrong. You should not be, let's be honest, what most of you are saying, the ponies, you're saying that you should be the only one to have access to exclusive games. That's what you're saying. I mean, even after finding out that your company, the company you love so much, was going around paying companies not to put their games on Xbox. You walk around here and you talk about how Xbox is failing, but you don't want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about one of the reasons why they're failing is because they're having their legs cut from under them. This is like being in a foot race with a guy, and you're going to walk over and hit him in the foot with a sledgehammer, and you're going to say, wow, guy, I really toasted you. You're garbage. I told you I left you by a mile. You shouldn't even be racing. You should just get out of the race. You shouldn't race anymore. You're a piece of crap. How dare you come out here? I mean, so you guys are just wrong, man. And like I said, you don't want to actually say the words, we should be the only ones to get exclusives. But when it's all said and done, when you take everything that you type onto social media and everything you say on your videos in its totality, that's what it is. You think you're the only ones who are supposed to have exclusive deals. That's why to you, it looks like many ponies are going around saying because Microsoft is purchasing Activision Blizzard, they're buying up the industry. They're buying up half of the games. Activision Blizzard is not half of the games. Now, I understand that looking through the lens in which you're viewing this situation, to you really believe it's too many games because you don't want Xbox to have any games. So you can continue saying Xbox has no games. So you're running around here acting like you're afraid that Sony is going to disappear. Sony isn't going to disappear, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but they're not exactly being the most creative company lately, and I think that's because of Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan is more of a numbers guy. They need to get a guy like Sean Layton. They need to get somebody back in there like that, somebody who actually loves gaming. You know, there have been a couple of people, a couple of YouTubers, pro PlayStation YouTubers who claim they love Jim Ryan because he doesn't play games, which is ridiculous. You know, they want a businessman. Well, how about both? You can actually have both. And it's possible to get both because PlayStation and Xbox once had both. Even when the Xbox first came out with the Xbox One, the original Xbox, all of the people who were involved in developing that game, they love games. That's why they were able to pull it off the way that they did. So you can have both. So you can hate me for saying it. That's just my opinion. Look, if you love Jim Ryan, that's totally fine. I would never knock a person for having a different opinion than my own. In my opinion, I think he's actually hurting PlayStation. Now, in his defense, I understand that he has people that he has to answer to. A lot of this is also the company. I kind of feel like, and I could be wrong about this, but this whole not releasing brand new games day and date, I have a feeling that that's the people that's above Jim Ryan telling him that's a non-starter. So he has no choice but to come out and stick to his guns on that. I could be wrong on that. I'll be honest with you. It's just a gut feeling. I have no reason to actually, but there's nothing I can show you in black and white to prove that. But I just think you could have a better leader. And he's an awful liar, which indicates that he isn't very smart. You know, I'm not talking about actually you may, well, he went to this college and that. I'm talking about common sense wise. He's not very smart. I mean, for example, some of the things that he's been doing, like for example, when he came out and he held the controller the wrong way. I mean, the first thing this guy should have figured is, look, in this industry, I need to get somewhat familiar with what's going on with these games and the consoles and how to, you know, he should have actually came and actually played some games. Even if it was only from a business perspective, like he didn't like it, like, wow, this is a total waste of time, but still learn the product. And he didn't do that. So he may be a genius academically. I don't know. I'm sure he is. But he just did some things to me that just kind of made me think, yeah, I don't know about that. Phil Spencer could be faking it. But at least he's smart enough to know he needs to fake it if that's the case. I don't believe that. But if that is the case, you still got to give him credit for that. All of the people, you look at that documentary about, you know, when they made the first Xbox, how they would all get together and have these co-op parties. You know, because that was the co-op machine. You know, it had the 4 connectors in the front, and then they all brought these different monitors, TVs back then, in the same room, and you had a bunch of people in the same room playing co-op together, and they were like a bunch of kids. These people love games. So you can have both. You can have a CEO that loves games and also is a smart businessman. Jim Ryan is simply a smart businessman that would probably be a perfect fit anywhere else but in gaming. But like I said, that's my opinion. You're welcome to yours. Anyway, guys, we're up on the holiday weekend. Guys, look, don't do too much drinking outside of the house. Do as much as you want inside the house, because that's certainly what I'm going to be doing. And hey, look, if you haven't subscribed yet, that's a problem. Go ahead and take care of that problem. And if you can, take some time to like the video and share the video. I would definitely appreciate that. But look, guys, meanwhile, as usual, especially this weekend, stay safe.